Hey everyone, my name is Megan and I am the admissions counselor here at Columbus State University. So I am so excited to celebrate you and your acceptance to CSU. Congrats, woo! I know one of the most common questions that I get as a counselor from students is, what do I do with financial aid? Or how do I go about starting financial aid? How do I accept my awards? And it can be a lot to process and to break down. So I am teaming up with Mandy, who is our Associate Director in our Financial Aid Department, to answer all of your questions. That way you're really coming into CSU, coming in as a new cougar with the right tools and steps. Again, congratulations. And Mandy, if we could, I just love, since I get so many questions about financial aid, I'd really love to step into the students' shoes and kind of walk through maybe the process, maybe some of the, the top questions you get, but I know it can be a little intimidating. So I will hand it over to you, and maybe even we could, if you wanted to with the cougar, you could pause the screen and kind of walk through the steps while Mandy's going over it. But yes, I'm going to hand it over to you, Mandy. Thank you so much for joining us and celebrating our new cougars. We're so excited you're here, and it's all yours.
It is wonderful to be here, and it is wonderful to see you all virtually. We're very happy that you were able to join us today. Congratulations. This is a big step, the next step in your lives to start your collegiate career. So we're just so excited that you're here with us. And Megan's right, it's very intimidating. Financial aid can be very intimidating, and I understand that it can also be frustrating and confusing. So I'm hoping that I can go through some steps that can help you get started. If you have already done some of these steps, start at the step that you need to start at. I'm also going to give you our contact information at the end of this little presentation. I know that financial aid can be very personal, very customized, because each student's situation is not the same. So if you still have questions after this, please feel free to reach out to our office so that we can assist you one-on-one, and we can help you in any way that we possibly can. Now, for students who have never completed or never even been through the financial aid process, the very first thing you have to do, step one, is you've got to complete that FAFSA. That is the application. You had to do an admissions application to get into Columbus State. You now have to do a financial aid application. And it's okay to do them both at the same time. It's okay to do one the financial aid application before the other, because many students want to know how much financial aid they're getting even before they're accepted to college. But y'all are already accepted, so hopefully by now you've already completed that FAFSA, because this is very important to make sure you have this in line before you start classes, and we'll get a little bit more into that a little bit later. But that FAFSA application, I always like to call it the umbrella application. And the reason why I say that is because not only does it automatically check your eligibility for federal aid, it also helps check you for state aid as well. And that state aid includes your Hope Scholarship or the Zell Miller Scholarship if you're eligible. So, students who are only interested in the Hope or the Zell Miller, you can do a separate application through Georgia Futures. However, I always encourage students to do the FAFSA, because not only does it automatically check you for that Hope and Zell, but it also puts you in line for federal aid if that's something that you are interested in. That FAFSA can be done at a government website, studentaid.gov. Always go to that government website to complete the FAFSA. It stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. And the reason why I say that is because some students sometimes go to websites and they're charged to complete their FAFSA. Please just go to that studentaid.gov website, and that free application is truly free. If they ever ask for a credit card or anything, exit out of it. It is not a website you want to be doing. This is a free application because it is federal and for state. If you are a first-time student who has never completed a FAFSA before, you will click Start Here. As you can see, I have a screenshot here. This is what it looks like when you log in to studentaid.gov and navigate to the FAFSA completion section. You will complete Start Here if this is the very first time. Now, if you have completed a FAFSA before in the past, you need to complete login. And the reason for that is because returning users, FAFSA has a really neat I think it's neat. It's a neat, what they call it, smart logic, to where they pull information from your past and your previous FAFSA to this current one. Things such as that don't change: your social, your birthday. Address remains the same. Now, of course, if you need to edit that and you've moved, of course, you can change that. But things that typically don't change from year to year, they go ahead and pull it over, making it much quicker for you to complete that FAFSA. It can take about 30 minutes to complete a FAFSA. If you do, if you're a returning user, it may be even less, because a lot of that information is already pre-populated in some of those fields. When completing a FAFSA, you have to have an FSA username and password. If you are a first-time user, you must create one. If you're under the age of 24 and a dependent student, you will have to have your parent to create one as well. They cannot be using the same information, such as some parents and students share an email address. If you are going to be creating two separate FSA usernames and passwords, there has to be two separate emails in that case. And I like to tell that because sometimes parents and students get a little confused in that. Sometimes they try to create the same password and username under the same email address. So just make sure you're aware of that. And remember it. This is going to be your username and password to a very secure site. It's a government website that's about your financial aid. So it's going to have your social, your date of birth, your address, all of that. Things that is very sensitive information. So make sure you hold tight to that username and password and don't give it out to anyone. So like Megan stated, I want to kind of get into your shoes. I want to show you step by step on some things that you need. One of the biggest questions I get is, where do I check my financial aid? How do I know if more documents are needed and things like that? With the FAFSA, sometimes once we get your FAFSA, it takes about 3 to 5 days for us to get your FAFSA into our system. So if you completed it like on a weekend, we should have it in by the end of the following week. And it's always good to make sure you check your My CSU account. By the financial aid office here at Columbus State, we primarily communicate to you through your CSU email and through your My CSU account. By checking that on a regular basis, that keeps you up to date on what items are needed. Like I said, sometimes when we get that FAFSA in, sometimes we need some additional documentation from you or your parents, things like a copy of your driver's license, a copy of taxes, things like that. And the way we're communicating with you, you need to be made aware of that. And this is how you can check that on your My CSU account. Before I get into these steps, please visit our website. It's columbusstate.edu. Go to the financial aid webpage, and on our homepage, there is a checklist. And I cannot encourage you enough to please download that checklist. It is a very helpful resource for students. It's very helpful to have that as a resource, because these steps I'm going over right now is in this checklist. So you are able to pause and kind of take pictures and see this, but for future reference, if you just want to download that checklist off of our website, all of this information is on there. So I just wanted to throw that out there. So like I said, one of the biggest questions I get is, what more do I need to do? Is there anything else I need to do? Well, this is where you go on your My CSU account. I got little screenshots from a cell phone so you can see. Once you log into your My CSU, you need to click on the left-hand side and it says Students. Make sure you click on Students. And once you click on Students, I got some more screenshots for you. You need to make sure you click on that Financial Records. As you can see, I've got arrows pointing. And Financial Records will take you to anything that deals with your account. When it comes to financial aid, not just financial aid, but also your charges. That's through our bursar's office. But the financial records is where you go to look at your charges, to make payments, to check your financial aid. So check on that financial records. And then if you are wanting to check your outstanding requirements, click on My Eligibility. And it's under the financial aid section, because you'll see there's different sections under financial records. But financial aid is where you'll go to check that My Eligibility. And then it kind of moves you on to student documentation requirements, and then it'll tell you exactly what you need to do. I highly recommend, though we are kind of straddling 2 school years right now. We're in the current school year of 2020, 2021. If you're coming fall, it's the 2021-22. So make sure you choose the correct school year to see exactly what items are needed. I also want to point out for students who are, if you're graduating high school in May and you're coming straight into college as a summer student, make sure you also do that 2020-21 FAFSA as well. Many students have already done their 2021-22 for fall, but if you are coming summer, you have to do that as well. So there's those confusions. So make sure you choose the correct school year, and so you'll know exactly what the outstanding requirements are. Another question I get a lot of is, I've done everything. How do I see where my awards are? So that foundation, you always start at students, financial records. And instead of clicking my eligibility this time, you're going to be clicking my award information. And then you'll be clicking award by aid year. As I said earlier, if you're coming fall, that is the 2021-22 school year. So, and then once you click that correct school year, you can just navigate and see everything that you've been awarded. Now, if you've already been awarded student loans, you will be able to start accepting those in the summer semester around June. Check around June. It's a little early right now to be able to accept those loans, but this is where you go to accept them. And the reason why we ask you to accept those loans is this is student loans. These are loans you will have to pay back. This is not just a simple grant that you don't have to worry about after you receive it. This is something we want you to actively accept and say, yes, I am aware and I know that I am taking on this loan. So we want you to actively accept it, and this is where you go for that. Last but not least, and this is my all-time favorite section under the financial records and under financial aid, is checking your overall financial aid status. This is really important because after you start your first semester, if you're a brand new freshman, never attended, not a transfer student, you are starting off with a clean slate. You're starting off and your overall status will be blank. But as you move on in your college career, those numbers will start populating, showing you what your GPA is, showing how much financial aid you've used. Also showing you things like, are you HOPE eligible? If you graduate as a high school HOPE scholar, we will go ahead and put that HOPE scholarship on your account for fall. However, for some students who may not graduate as a HOPE scholar, they can be checked again after 30 semester hours, 30 college degree hours. So this is where you can go to check that to see if you're online and on track to getting that HOPE scholarship if you have that 3.0 GPA. So this is my favorite. After you get back to the financial records and under financial aid, you click on my overall eligibility. And this is just a really great tab to use. I know many students who use it and they love it just because they can go to one single web page and see so much information. So again, I know this is a lot. These are screenshots. However, this is all on our checklist. So again, go to our financial aid webpage, download our checklist. All this information that I've just covered is there in a step-by-step because we've been into a student account to make, we've been and done the step-by-steps to make sure students are following these steps exactly. So these are the exact steps that you do. I have spoken with students on the phone via video and walked them through these steps, and it is step-by-step. So this is an excellent tool. So please make sure you download that checklist so you can have this information that I've just covered. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is to check your balance. If you're doing financial aid, you've done everything. You've done your FAFSA, you've turned in all of your documentation, you've been awarded now. Now you need to know your balance because you need to make sure that your balance is being covered by your financial aid. And sometimes when it's not being covered, what more do you need? Do you need to do you need to do a payment plan? Will your parents have to come a little out of pocket, or do your parents have to apply for a PLUS loan to help assist with that? Things like that. So it's very good to make sure you're checking that balance. All of that's also under financial records, but it's under the student account section where I was showing you financial aid. It's under student account. That invoice, they'll mail you an invoice, they'll email you an invoice, but it's also on your My CSU. And My CSU is more real time, so you can see if you've got something sent in the mail a couple weeks ago that may be older, go into My CSU, you can actually look at it and it's real time. So as I stated, if you see sometimes that your financial aid is not being covered fully, or your balance is not being fully covered by financial aid, that the initial financial aid, you can apply for additional financial resources. And as you can see, I have them listed here. I already touched on them, that Parent Plus loan. Many of our students who live on campus, parents have to apply for that additional loan to help assist because it does cost between $8,000 and $10,000 a semester for in-state students if you are living on campus, getting the meal plan, books, all of that. So, sometimes that additional resource. We do have a payment plan. Our bursar's office offers a payment plan. We have many students who utilize that. It makes the payment so much more manageable. If maybe you owe just a couple thousand more dollars and you're not wanting to take out more loans for that, you can put it on a payment plan, and it makes it more manageable to break those payments down instead of having to pay it all in one lump sum. There are also private loans as well that are a little separate and apart. And so, those are not through the FAFSA. That's actually through the Select website. And so they do require a credit check. So it's a little bit, maybe a little bit more steps in order to do those. But that's also an option as well that we have.
Mandy, I have a question for you.
Go ahead.
I got this question from a student. She asked me if her housing and her meal plan could be covered under financial aid. Would financial aid take care of that?
So a typical award, that's a great question. So a typical award for a student who completes their FAFSA, if they are eligible for the maximum amount of Pell Grant, if they're getting the Hope Scholarship, and they take out student loans in their own name, there still could potentially be a deficit, still be a couple $1,000s off, because costs, the FAFSA only gives so much money a year, and the cost does increase. It's between $8,000 and $10,000 a semester. So depending upon the meal plan you take out, depending upon the dorm room that you're living in, that of course can all fluctuate. And your books can cost up to $1,000 a semester too. So it's always a good idea to have that additional funding available. And the only reason why I say that is because, as I just stated, if you're getting the max amount of Pell Grant, a Hope Scholarship, and the max amount of the student loans in just the student's name, sometimes it still is not covered. So that's why with these alternative options, Parent Plus loans, that's why many of our students who do live on campus, parents have to go into that Parent Plus loan and complete that. Website's the same. I said earlier, it's a consolidated website. Studentaid.gov is where the parent would go. Use the parent's FSA username and password that we talked about earlier and log in. The parent can apply. That's really, to be honest, in my years in financial aid, that's the most common additional resources that I've seen parents and students utilize if their original award is not enough to cover. Now, if a student's not living on campus, that's a little different conversation, because living on campus, there are those additional charges of the dorm and the meal plan and things like that. Living off campus and just having your tuition and fee charges on your account, like I said, that's a little different conversation. Your financial aid very well may pay for that, and they may not have to get additional funding. But many of our students who do live on campus will have to get additional funding. However, it's considered financial aid. So financial aid can still cover it, but you may have to take additional steps other than just completing that FAFSA to get those additional funding.
Gotcha. And then one more question, because I see the Parent Plus, and this always, comes up. If I am a student and I want really nothing to do with this, can I just hand it off to my mom or dad and say, hey, take care of this? Do they need a password? Or I know they have their own login, but how does that work?
So that's another really good question. So that is a conversation you students seem to be having with your parents. You can't just make a decision saying, I'm handing this off to you, mom and dad. This is a conversation that you will definitely have to have around the dinner table at night. When you are preparing for the balances, I have seen many parents who do not want their son or daughter to be in student loan debt. And that is an option. When you complete that FAFSA, when you as a student complete the FAFSA in your name, we will automatically check you for student loans in your name. But that's a limited amount. That's why sometimes that Parent Plus loan is needed. However, you can choose to decline. I showed you how to go online and accept it through your My CSU. Same steps, but instead of choosing accept, you choose decline. And then your parent can then apply for that Parent Plus loan and can apply for an amount greater than what they initially were going to apply for, because now the student declined their loans. That's an option. I've had students and parents say, we don't want any loan debt whatsoever, no Parent Plus loan, we don't want any regulars, we don't want any student loans, we're just going to make payments. They use that payment plan. Also, I've had parents and students apply for many scholarships outside of the FAFSA. Now, financial aid, we deal mainly with federal and state, but there are scholarships outside of the FAFSA that you can apply for separately. And then once it's sent to the school, then it can be applied to your account as well, and that would be better than having to take out student loans. Please always, utilize that as well. So students, you need to have a good conversation with mom and dad and make sure that you are on the same page, because with that FSA username and password, if a parent does apply for a Parent Plus loan, it does have to be in their name, and they're the ones responsible for it at that point. So, just make sure you have that good conversation with your parents so that there's not an awkward conversation a little later on. So this is the last thing I'm going to talk about, and this isn't really a step, this is just an FYI. We want you to know ahead of time before you get started that because you are utilizing federal and state aid, the federal and the state require you to maintain a certain average in order to continue to receive their aid. And that makes sense. I mean, this is, especially if you're getting Pell Grant and Hope, that's free aid. If you're taking out student loans, these are student loans that are not credit-based. They give you a pretty good amount, and you didn't really have to, all you had to do was complete a FAFSA. You didn't have to go through a credit check or anything. And this is very easy and very easily accessible aid for you. So they do have their criteria that you need to meet. So that criteria is, we call it satisfactory academic progress. As you can tell, financial aid, we really like acronyms. We have the FAFSA, we have SAP, but SAP is the acronym in this case, satisfactory academic progress. And that is monitored at the end of every semester. You have to maintain a cumulative 2.0 GPA as an undergraduate student, and you have to be passing at least 67% of those. And I know you're thinking, well, if I pass all my classes and have a 2.0, what does the 67% have to do? W's do count against a 67%. And when I say W's, I mean you can withdraw from a class. That does, and that does not count towards your GPA. So your GPA would still be unaffected. However, that PACE, which is the passing rate, would be affected. So just be very wary if you ever decide, if you're going through a class and you think, I might need to withdraw from this class, have a conversation with your academic advisor. Many of our academic advisors are excellently trained in SAP. They understand what you need and what you don't need to do in order to keep your financial aid. Just make sure that you're taking classes that are applicable to your degree. That's also part of the SAP process. If by some chance at the end of a semester you do fall below those standards, it has to be both. You have to meet both the 2.0 and the 67%. If you drop below that standard, we put you on a warning. We give you a grace period to try to overcome that. If at the end of that warning period you're back up above the requirements, you're put back into good standing, no harm done. Financial aid, you haven't lost it, because you can still get financial aid during that warning period. However, if at the end of that warning period you are still below those standards, we would have to find other kind of funding until you bring that up. Unfortunately, federal and state aid would be no longer be eligible for that time being, of course, until you meet it again. But make sure you have conversations with your academic advisor. We have excellent resources here at Columbus State to help you through your classes. So don't fall behind and don't think you don't have anyone to help you. We are here to help you. We want you to succeed. So hopefully we will not be having this conversation and you won't have to have this, but we always like to give you that as an FYI to begin with. There can be a difference between a financial aid GPA and an academic GPA. So just be aware, if you have retaken some classes, if you have to retake some classes, financial aid is going to look at it all, unfortunately, because it is being funded. Academic will only look at just the better of the two grades. So there could be a difference, and sometimes that causes confusion. That's a very common question I get from students. Again, I know this is kind of early on in your college career, but we want to make you aware so early on so that you're not having to worry about this. We want you to be made aware of it. Please let us know if we have any questions. We are here to help. As I said, we want you to succeed. We do not want you to feel like you're alone in this journey, because you are far from that. We are here for you. And as I said earlier at the beginning, I know financial aid can be very personal and very customized to you. I know I just touched on general information, but reach out to us. Let us know if you have any questions, and we're here to help.
Thank you so much, Mandy. Even I just soaked in a ton of knowledge. So thank you again. But I do have one last question before we wrap up. I would love to know if you had one piece of advice, either financial aid or just your one tip for our new Cougars coming in, what would that one piece of advice be?
So I actually have two. It's twofold. First of all, check your email, CSU email. It is so important. Financial aid's not the only office that communicates with you through CSU. That's how we communicate with you, but I know other offices on campus will communicate to you and with you through your Columbus State email. And it is so important that you not ignore emails from our offices. You may look at your inbox and say, why do I have 50 emails in my inbox right now? Just scroll through them, look at them. Don't ignore them, because what we send to you, we don't send it to you for just to send information. We want you to know this. We're sending this to you because it is important. So please check that. My second little number one tip is adhere to deadlines. I cannot stress to you enough how important deadlines are, especially in financial aid. Our deadlines are posted on our website. The deadline for fall is very quickly approaching. It's June 1st. And so if you are planning on starting in the fall semester, June 1st, we have to have everything in, not just the FAFSA, but documentation, everything. So it's just important that you adhere to those deadlines. October is when when FAFSA reopens again for next school year. We have students completing FAFSA. We are bringing in FAFSAs in October. We are awarding students in November for the next August. So it's just so important that, if early bird gets the worm. If you are completing your stuff early, you are not in line fretting over whether or not your financial aid is covering your balance, or will I be kicked out of class because I haven't paid my balance. Do things early, do things timely. The deadline's June 1st. Mentally think, oh, let me do this a month ahead of time, because I even want to be even more so and on time. So deadlines, CSU email. That's what I recommend.
I agree with both of those. Like, hard for the deadline. If like you said, early bird gets the worm, and you want that aid for sure. So thank you again for being here and answering the questions. I just want to really touch base you can schedule appointments virtually and telephone. You go to financial aid website, there's a button that says schedule meeting. Click that. You can always talk with somebody. You can always email them, call, but and then there's also an FAQ. It's amazing, the FAQ page on the website. So lots of information, lots of ways to reach out. If you have questions, let us know. Congratulations again. Yay, see you in the fall, see you in campus.
Bye-bye.
Bye.